Welcome back, students. We're continuing in Modular 3, Environmental Systems Theory. And we're going to go ahead and move forward on a set of slides that's going to try to take a look at the various different levels of systems that may exist in any given client's environment. And this can be some challenging concepts, so please be patient with yourself in terms of understanding all of the components of this. But I've used a set of slides that I hope will help contribute to your understanding and your knowledge. So let's start. And the very first system that we want to talk about is called the microsystem. And again, to begin with, there are 4 different levels of an environment, with the first being the microsystem. So for purposes of a definition, the microsystem is considered the individual, so the client that you're working with, or whoever it is. You could be using this with family members if you want to do, but the microsystem starts with the individual, and it's recognizing all of the people and the groups that incorporate that individual's day-to-day environment. So these are the people that you're seeing every single day. Why is this important? Well, it's important for the social worker to focus at this level because they're trying to determine whether the relationships that that client has with others is the same across individuals and groups, and whether the individual sees themselves as valued and respected by the others in the world. They're looking to see whether there's distinctions that are being made in relationships that the client may be having with these limited number of individuals who they're seeing every single day, and then making determinations as to what could be the rationale or the reasoning behind why they're experiencing different relationships with different types of people. So it's part of the investigative process. It's part of the way of being able to really look into how your client perceives relationships, values relationships, and recognizes relationships. So what I've done is I've taken a character from literature. Hopefully, maybe some of you are familiar with Harry Potter. And I've used Harry as sort of in the client role in terms of trying to define and explain what all these different levels are. So within the microsystem level for Harry, if you look at the circle around him, these are all of the people that he typically has a relationship with and probably sees every single day. So his friends Hermione and Ron, his professors at Hogwarts, Dumbledore, who's one of his primary supporters, fellow Gryffindors, which is the sort of the sorority, or not sorority, the fraternity, or the house that he's a part of. One of his professors, Professor Snape, the Quidditch team, which is the sports team that he's a part of, and then Hagrid, who again is an adult who is a friend and supporter of Harry. So this is Harry's microsystem in terms of the people that he sees every single day, that he interacts with every single day. So the second level of the environment is the Meso System. The Meso System is very unique in terms of that you're looking at the relationship between 2 microsystems linked by some person who is present in both. So let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper into that. So the Meso System involves the relationship between 2 microsystems. So think about all of the people that you saw revolving around Harry in the last slide that are linked by a person who is present in both microsystems. So for you yourself, you might think, are there 2 people who are close to each other, but are also separately each close to you? So let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide and see if we can give you an example of this. So again, if you're familiar with the Harry Potter, either the books or the movies, you know that Harry's best friends are Hermione and Ron. The relationship between Ron and Hermione affects Harry throughout their 6 years at Hogwarts, which is the school they all attend. And when Ron and Hermione fight, Harry has to play the role of the peacekeeper. So Harry has a relationship with Ron. Harry has a relationship with Hermione. And quite frankly, although we learn later that things changed, quite frankly, Hermione and Ron probably would not necessarily have a relationship with each other if it wasn't for the fact that both of them have a relationship with Harry. So that is the concept behind the Meso System. So again, a single person, you've got the relationship that they have with each of the individuals, and then what's the nature of the relationship of those two individuals. Why would this be important in a counseling or in a therapeutic relationship, a case management relationship? Again, you're taking a look at the role that the client has to take on in terms of managing the relationships between other folks. So like we said in the narrative here, Harry is the one who often has to kind of resolve issues between the two. When you think about your family or your friend systems, is there that person who's always taking on that role? Sometimes there's the person who's on the flip of that, and they're the ones that maybe are always sort of instigating or starting trouble between the two outside parties. And it's interesting to always look and see what the motivation is for people when they take on those kinds of activities, to say the least. So the third level of the environment is what's identified as the exosystem. So the exosystem is defined as, first of all, you're starting to move away from sort of individuals and starting to move more into the sense of a community or the community level. And this is the level of a social environment that incorporates community factors in which an individual does not participate directly, but that affects the way the individuals function. So let's get into this a little bit more. So this level includes factors such as workplace policies of the parents. So here's a great example. The workplace policy of the parents affect the parents, right? But if they cannot see a physician due to no health insurance from their job maybe after a parent loses their job, for example, this decision has an impact on the child. So again, it's about that concept of that third party being impacted by something that they, quite frankly, do not have any involvement in. So the parent's not able to sustain their health insurance after losing their job. And as a result, the child is now suffering because they're not able to access a healthcare provider. The child isn't an employee. The child doesn't have a direct relationship with health insurance. Their relationship is with the parent, and the parent's relationship is with the health insurance that was available through their employer. So that's the way to think about that. So think about things that impact our lives and our ability to function successfully in the world. Things like a school board. A school board right now is playing a very huge role in your lives because it's telling you that you cannot send your kids to school, that you have to keep them at home, and that you're responsible for making sure that they attend all of their Zoom classes and whatever else is involved. There might be community policies that impact you and your family. There might be community attitudes and values. You may feel very much that you are a person who's progressive and forward thinking, and maybe you're residing in a community that's quite politically conservative. And so that can always be a challenging situation. And finally, there might be economic or social factors within a neighborhood or a community that would impact a family in terms of being able to be successful. So this may be a bit of a reach, and just hold on and let me get you through this to see whether it makes any sense. But The exosystem in terms of Potter's world is really about, again, all of these folks that are surrounding Harry Potter. But one in particular, Professor Snape, has an interesting relationship with Harry. And it goes back to the fact that Professor Snape, at one point in his earlier days before he became a professor at Hogwarts, had a relationship with Harry's mom before Harry's mom got married and had Harry and all of this kinds of stuff. So Snape had a relationship with Lily, Harry's mom, in which Harry was not involved. Harry wasn't born yet. Snape's relationship with Lily and his love for her affects Harry deeply, because if you know the books or you know the movies, you know that Harry and Professor Snape had a very adversarial relationship. Snape knows that Lily died because of the prophecy about Harry. Harry was considered sort of the ultimate wizard, and Lily died as a result of the fact that of the power that Harry was believed to contain, and Snape holds Harry's responsibility for Lily's death, and is thus very cruel to Harry in classes. So Harry wasn't involved at all with the relationship of Professor Snape and Lily, but it now is having a direct impact on him as a result of Professor Snape's perceptions. And the final level is the macro system level. This is the fourth level of the environment. Macro system consists of societal factors such as cultural attitudes and values of the society. For example, the attitudes we hold towards women, people of color, the poor, and violence. The role of the media in addressing or promoting social problems. Some would suggest, for example, that the media promotes violence and maybe even teen pregnancy as an issue. And federal legislation and other social policies that affect a given individual. It's interesting to think, are some groups valued at the expense of others? Are some groups oppressed through things like sexism and racism? Is there an individualistic or a collective orientation? Do we as a country have a tendency to think one for all and all for one, and we support everybody, and we all want to work together for the benefit of everyone? Or are we operating from a place where we basically think about ourselves and nobody else? And is violence a norm? Interesting, given what we're seeing in our country today. So going back to Harry Potter world one more time. There are these big societal issues that are really playing a role in terms of Harry's life. There's the whole Muggle world, which is government, healthcare institutions like schools, healthcare systems. There's a bit of notoriety, or Harry being sort of famous. He's identified as the boy who lived with the public, and it has made him a celebrity. He has money. He has an inheritance that is at a bank, and that sort of puts him in a higher social class, maybe than Ron's family, who are more middle class or lower middle class. And there's also all the magical pieces that kind of come with Harry. Part of the society when Harry was born, as the books get going, the movement becomes more prominent. The Death Eaters, and how Harry is always being threatened by them. There's always kind of this sense that there could be an eventual civil war in the country, and all of those different kinds of things. So these are these big overarching factors that at times we may think that they're distant and far away from us and don't really have an impact on us. But if you really begin to think about it, you will begin to recognize the fact that these are the kinds of things that can have an impact on us day to day. So getting back to the ecological and systems framework, we want to really drill down about how it is used. So we talked about theory and that theory views systems as goal-oriented and incorporates the client in the change process. So we've talked a little bit before about the fact that you are setting and achieving goals in terms of a change process that a client has identified that they're interested in working through, and you're working in partnership with the client to be able to move towards achieving those particular goals. The ecological systems framework allows a social worker to engage in positive transactions between a client and their environment. The more you know about the environments that the client is operating within and the challenges that that client has, the more likely you're going to be able to be effective with them. The ecological systems framework views change and conflict as part of an individual's daily living. For some folks, challenges in terms of dealing with conflict or dealing with change can be difficult. And part of what we're always working on with our clients is to help them recognize that change and conflict is going to be a constant in their life, and that the more that we can provide them with the tools and the resources to be able to manage those kinds of things, and particularly the anxiety that might come up for them relative to those experiences happening, those will be tools that they'll be able to take away after we've ended our relationship with them, our therapeutic relationship with them, and be able to use hopefully in the future. Because nothing's more constant than change and conflict. Encourages social workers to be aware of systems and how change at one level impacts all levels. So here's an example, taking a look at the issue of poverty. So when dealing with a problem such as poverty, individuals may have a one-dimensional way of explaining the problem. It's because people are lazy or they're victims of their own circumstances. But from an ecological systems perspective, we would identify that there are many, many factors, a large complex territory and a puzzle with many, many pieces that would contribute to explaining why somebody is experiencing poverty. There can be these individual factors, family factors, community factors, societal factors. There is the impact of an economic system. Are we in a depression? Are we in a recession? Is the job market poor right now? Did you go to school years ago to learn skills that are not really applicable anymore in terms of the kind of job that you're hoping to get? How does that impact on employment? We need to absolutely recognize the fact that race, ethnicity, and gender plays a role in terms of opportunities. And that for a long, long time, we know that people of color and women have often not been considered for the jobs that maybe were the most prized or the ones that people were most interested in securing. And we're going to talk a whole lot more about that as we move further into this semester. But I think we really need to recognize and acknowledge the fact that there are things that are inherent in people, their ethnicity, their race, their gender, that may prohibit them from being able to move outside of poverty. So all of these are ways that that our systems theory can help us understand about the ways that poverty is examined and identified. Social welfare institutions assist in meeting the needs of individuals when primary resources are not available or are inadequate to address them. So when a family, when a couple, when an individual finds themselves not succeeding as they would like to, it often has to do with either a deficit in their environments that they're operating in, or something in terms of their ability to be able to function successfully within those environments. And that's at a point in time when resources are brought in to be able to sort of modify that person's experience. So when you're talking about a more traditional social welfare system, often cash benefits or things like SNAP, which previously was identified as food stamps, and different kinds of things like that that really help a person or a family, couple, individually financially come into play as a result of possibly family breakdowns, problems with income distribution, and institutional failures in the religious, education, health, and or business sector. Excuse me. Target populations of social service agencies are groups that are not served adequately by the primary social systems in our society: the economic system, the political system, the family system, the religious system, the health system, and the education system. So all of those systems have areas in which populations are often not able to succeed at the level that others are. And so what that results then in is the need for social service, what we often call a safety net, to be able to help support individuals and families who are falling through these other kinds of systems. So here's an example. The family system is intended to meet a child's physical and emotional needs. That's what families are intended to do. Sometimes the primary family system fails and is unable to serve this function. At this point, the social welfare system provides services such as respite childcare, foster care, counseling, parenting classes. When the social welfare system functions to assist or replace the family in its childcare roles, this is an example of a social welfare system responding to a primary system failure. So the family is not able to successfully function, possibly because of issues around poverty or domestic violence, substance abuse. And as a result, the social welfare system needs to step in and be able to support this particular family so that they can get back on course. A major problem with our social welfare system is that each need usually is treated as a separate issue rather than as an interactive and interdependent part of a larger issue. So you may find a family that's struggling in terms of being able to adequately care for their children. And possibly what you learn is it's related to substance abuse possibly, or and that substance abuse may have a direct relationship with the person's mental health. And so what historically you found, that's changed a bit, but historically what you found was that if there was an issue of mental health and substance abuse for a particular individual, if you referred them to a substance abuse treatment program, they often were going to be rejected because the substance abuse treatment program would say, send them back when you've addressed their mental health issues. And then what we would do is you would send them to a mental health provider who then may say, I'm not going to see them at this point until you can help them address their substance abuse issue. So it was, again, one of those situations where rather than having a program that could address both pieces, both substance abuse and mental health, which of course there are now programs that can do that, the person was often sort of caught in a limbo and not able to really move forward. Okay, so we are going to stop the video here, and we will move on in terms of a discussion of the generalist model in the next video.